So you're finally ready to break out of the box and master the fretboard once and for all. Then you're gonna need to start thinking horizontally. Now, fretboard mastery at large is very simple. It's just knowing all the pathways and having each one distinctly ingrained in your mind. Now, the one pathway that always seems to get overlooked is that full range pathway. But it goes without saying that every pathway is equally valid, and you need them all to complete that full stack mastery. That full range triadic framework that I teach in my fretboard mastery course is just one of the layers in that full stack fretboard mastery system, which of course includes an entire chord mastery system, right? Because fretboard mastery is not complete without chords. We're not even gonna have time to get anywhere near the chord aspect in this video. All right, so think about that classic pentatonic blues language. Obviously it's classic for a reason, but it's become a dead end for a lot of players who want to actualize a unique voice on the guitar. And obviously in 2025, you're gonna have to dig a hell of a lot deeper than those classic pentatonic licks if you really want to get that unique voice to become truly definitive. Now, maybe some of you have already made that connection between the classic 2-note per string pentatonic and say the Dorian scale, right? From here to here. Right? Just adding that ninth for that Dorian and that major 6 for that Dorian, but it's still kind of like in that pentatonic, right? That Dorian blues is also in there. That's that dime bag. That's that Dorian blues, and it starts with that major 6th against that minor 3rd. Now I'm all over the fretboard here because I got that fretboard mastery system and I see how everything connects. However, I'm trying to connect that simple idea that that classic pentatonic shape can get you very, very far. And I'll go one deeper on you. I'll go that melodic minor. Right? Right, that melodic minor takes it up one notch deeper, but it's the same thing. It's kind of coming from the same tonic minor situation, except for having this, you've got this. It's kind of still connected though. Right, see what I'm doing? That's that cosmic blues. And I just fast forward you guys 10,000 years in the future, but we are talking about full-blown fretboard mastery, but we have all of these things completely systemized in the school curriculum within the fretboard mastery course. All of that classically iconic cosmic blues melodic minor language, the intergalactic cross in some ways could literally be defined as the way that the pentatonic scale relates to the fretboard. Like, dude, I know. We've all thought of this. I mean, I've talked about the cosmic blues with lots of people, right? This is a phenomenon. Why do you think guitar is like the most like resonant concept? I think it's related to the way that the fretboard teaches us about the pentatonics and then the natural expansion of the pentatonics, because what you're now seeing in all of this is just those natural pentatonic expansions. And we see the power of that sort of pentatonic framework, that sort of like bluesy pentatonic thing. And you can fully saturate that with your fully extended tonic minor chords like I'm doing. This stuff, right? This major 7, major 6 against the minor 3rd stuff. That sound. And this sound. Those ones. That's that cosmic blues. I have written extensively on this topic and about practice systems, and I'm actually going to break it down for you in this video. I'm going to lay down the foundation for getting to that point on the fretboard where you actually reach the cosmic blues. But you'll see that before you can reach the cosmic blues and that full harmonic saturation, okay? The full harmonic saturation is when I'm playing in the cosmic blues scale up to 8 notes a lot of the times. Check what that is. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? That's if I want to go Dorian blues, right? That's full saturation, and I can actually saturate it deeper. That's the melodic minor side. There's your melodic minor blues. And so for sure, we've talked about that minor bebop. So full saturation, right? And this now goes into a deeper philosophy where all of your saturated harmonic language, for example, when you add tetrachords, you are saturating. When you add pentatonics, you are saturating. When you add hexatonic scales, you are saturating. When you add 7-note scales, fully extended chords, you are saturating. Your ability to saturate without muddying the message is only a result of your ability to see the increased saturation of the harmonic spectrum relative to the triadic foundations. And that's exactly where fretboard mastery crosses into harmony. And what seems to emerge are these two distinct fretboard dialects, if you will, right? So one is that sort of like that Stevie Ray Vaughan expansion pack, right? And then that other dialect is essentially that Yngwie Malmsteen. So now you see the only thing that's missing here is playing triads in the local range, right? Because we're playing triads in that full range. But now what about playing triads in the local range? A whole new mentality emerges, right? So check it out on A minor, right? If I'm playing in the local range, all I've got, and of course, technically you do have all of this, and all of that is fair game, right? But how do you make music with that? Do you go, maybe that's maybe one place to go with it. And this is where my rhythmic mentality emerges, and it's not to be taken for granted, because if I didn't leverage rhythmic variation, this idea right here would not be a whole lot of material. But the way that it works is through the rhythmic intention, right? So I think of everything rhythmically. 3, 2, 4. Right, just to play the local triad, right? And there's the idea of the logical expansions, right? Right? That's just adding the tetrachord. Right, just adding one more note to that local framework. So it's like first level local range triad configurations. And that naturally sets a stage for your tetrachords. That's the first thing you add is the ninth. The ninth is going to be a hell of a lot more consonant than the seventh. So it makes logical sense to add the ninth before you add the seventh in your harmonic saturation spectrum. What fretboard mastery teaches us is how we can play more notes without saturating the harmonic spectrum. So often if we want to play more notes and we're thinking about this vertical view of the fretboard here, right? We have to dig deeper in the scales. We have to start bringing up your Dorian blues, your melodic minor blues, right? And that's one type of language, but imagine not having to dig deeper in your harmonic vocabulary when you want to play more notes, right? And this, of course, just allows for more time before you reach that harmonic saturation point. Now, obviously, those pathways compound when you add the tetrachords, right? So if I'm playing this E major full range triad, right? No tetrachord, but watch what happens when I add the tetrachord. That final fantasy level, right? And that's just the tetrachord. What do you think happens when you add the pentatonic, right? And then you add those hexatonics, then you're now at your 7-note scales. You see what I'm saying? That's why the seventh, it's like, it's actually more logical to play the 9th before you play the 7th when you're thinking about your color palette in terms of the harmonic saturation point, right? You want to leave yourself headroom to reach that harmonic saturation point, and the fretboard mastery pathways allow you to do that, right? They allow you to play more notes before you fill up that harmonic saturation point. And then what starts to emerge is that fundamental fretboard duality, which seems to be sort of that cosmic blues thing, right? Right, that cosmic blues, as opposed to that triad thing, right? So you have that fundamental duality. Now you're starting to see that fretboard mastery mentality. So the obvious question, how the actual do we practice it? I'm going to show you the exact practice system that we use to integrate this fretboard mastery concept by sharing a recording of a lesson I did with one of my OG Inner Circle members, Khalil Grimes, monstrous composer, monstrous producer, and well on his way to comprehensive guitar virtuosity for the purpose of leading his band, but also so he can lay down some of the most deeply woven solos imaginable on his own tracks. So Khalil and I discuss level 1 and level 2 practice according to the Turbo Booster practice framework. The Turbo Booster practice framework requires us to use the pathways of fretboard mastery to navigate our way through a form. So level 1, for example, would be a single pathway with no rhythmic or melodic variation. So that could look like, but what we do is, and we'll explain exactly why we did that. We just took the duality of fretboard mastery, the local range triads and the full range triads, right? And we just put them into one exercise according to a harmonic rhythm, right? It's the classic practice form. And as we're establishing that practice form, we get into the discipline of practice, because the discipline of the Turbo Booster is the main thing you got to pay attention to, because it doesn't work if you don't stay disciplined in the practice. Like, for example, on level 2, we can add rhythmic and melodic variation, but that's it. 3, 4. Whoa, right? That's that discipline. That was staying inside it. And the thing is if you stay disciplined, what ends up happening is when you actually go to make music with other people, that's where the abundance blows up, right? Because you don't have to stay in those parameters, right? When you're playing with real people, you can be free to focus on what the other people are doing, right? But when you are practicing, you're focusing on the parameters. Your ability to be creative in the parameters is the muscle that you're strengthening, because there's always going to be parameters. It's the form itself. And the whole idea is you want to leave yourself headroom, right? On that harmonic saturation spectrum. You start with that simple triadic approach where rhythm is your best tool, right? And as you saturate the harmonic spectrum, you add more notes, and the rhythm might be more streamlined and less syncopated, right? But always that duality, and seeing how certain fretboard configurations relate to that duality and having a system for practicing it. So that's what Khalil and I are going to get into. We're going to get in the actual practice system over the classic form. We get into tons of extra stuff too. We're getting into some false fingering. We get into philosophy of picking, which is huge. Obviously the range optimization and the whole mentality of range optimization. It's a good one. You'll definitely enjoy it. That's why I wanted to share it with you. So without further ado, here it is. We're just going to stick to using those particular shapes, but we're going to improvise them, and I'll show you how in a second, to ingrain them deeper, because before you expand on them, you need to ingrain those primary components, right? That's your like basic fretboard mastery harmonic translation on the fretboard stuff. So on those 2 chord changes, we're playing both local triad configurations, like they're not full range. So let's actually contrast it with the full range. So once we get from this second inversion, C major, open, takes us really nicely to that first inversion F minor. So it's going to be that A flat on the 11th fret. Now on this situation, we're going to actually use the fretboard mastery pathway to access the full range here. And so that's going to be this. So we're going to get that pathway going. And now we have a little pathway. And what's great about that one is it's literally not this one. We're going to do a smaller one to start. So what we're seeing is we're seeing 2-note per string triads here. So it's a whole different approach to the fretboard, right? Because now we're accessing a larger range. There's that fundamental duality. You have the full range duality, which is not necessarily always full range. You could just think of it as like wider range, right? So you're over here in wider range. And then there's just certain pathways that we want to learn that optimize for that wider range. And then you start to see a contrast. So like kind of where we're going with this is like 3, 4. Right back to the, you know what I'm saying? So that's what we're setting up. And so like that thing I just did was like a level 2, because the level 1 pathway would just be like no improvisation. I'm not improvising. I'm practicing level 1. Now if I go to level 2, I improvise. See how I literally did not break the pathway. And so, man, I'm saying this is like a disciplined practice. And I used to do this way more, and now I just started doing it again, because it's like sometimes I remember stuff that used to be like blowing up, and I'm kind of going, because I like, you know, I'm composing, I'm like also kind of developing practice. Coming back to this over the past few months, so the trick is that it's like this like discipline thing, right? So that's where it blows up. And I would say that like the difference between practice and playing, very simple. When you're practicing, you're using specific discipline parameters, and you're definitely going to make a mistake where you like mess up the parameter. That's the point. But it's not like a bad thing when it happens, because it's like, well, you know, I can still play other things. I just, you know, didn't keep the parameter, so I failed in the practice. But what happens is when you get that practice mentality going, then when you go play with real people and you actually play music, it's literally like you have your God mode at that point, because everything that you do is like working with the smallest amount of material and then expanding that like progressively, gradually, and it just always feels like such an abundance. And that's what I'm saying. Like you can already hear that kind of, right? If I restrict myself to just that pathway of like, now, you know what I'm saying? Like when I'm like, I was not practicing. I was like a bad example of practicing. But the reason it flows that way is because like I literally just am kind of like setting the stage to play like more notes or more like less of the triad chord tones, more of the like scalar chord tones, which you access when you need to play more subdivisions, right? But in the context of perfectly voice-led triads, it just hits super, 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 super hard. And so you're thinking of like being disciplined in your tube aspect of fretboard mastery practice and focus on just keeping those parameters. So that's what we're going to like get a little deeper here. So let's get that last pathway going. 3, 4, right. It's just good. It's classic also. It's classic and good. So, okay, but just as a side note, because that's like, okay, you got that. Now we're going to work in that pathway exclusively, but I want to make a point here because like you gotta understand what's coming down the road a little ways. So part of the reason we'll do string skipping is because it's very easy. It maintains a 2-note per string pattern, but it's also just because sometimes the B string, it sets up kind of something that's like different. It shifts up the pattern, but it's a great variation, but you're going to hear that. It's a false fingering. Right? And then the same thing. This is why this cuts. The same thing for the next note. That's a sick one. Because when you actually use that, it's nuts. So that's your classic lick. Like now it's a secret lick. It sets up a whole other series of events. There's nothing wrong with using them. It's just like be aware that they don't fit like inside the essential like first principle harmony principle. It's now you've crossed over into fretboard logic, which is fine. We're doing fretboard mastery, but that's like you have to see those things in context. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm trying to drive at. Okay, so for that purpose, you do see it now. That's the thing, is I revealed it, but we're gonna purposely not use it in this pathway on freaking purpose. So now what we want to do is just practice getting it of, you know, that thing.
Can I see how you pick it?
Yeah.
How you pick that?
Okay, so let's cross it all the way open here. Okay, so like in the beginning, right? I mean, I'm doing a couple of things here. One is I'm purposely practicing not having to pick all the time. So for example, like this. Not picking that one. Now, if I did pick it, now I have to kind of go in this weird little awkward thing, but it's fine. We do it all the time as guitar, where I'm going down, up, down. All I'm going to advise with picking is don't overthink it. Focus on rhythm. If you can, so for example, that's where legato actually blows up for you. If you think about legato as a way of just getting the rhythm, then stuff like this starts to happen, right? I'm only picking the first note on E string. I didn't pick this. That's not a pick.
Oh, wow.
That's not a pick. So the whole point of the 2-note per string optimization is for that classic purpose. And the whole thing is it actually does allow you to pick too. You can pick. It's just that I'm advising that you get good at the hammer-on thing as a rhythmic tool, because the problem could be for a lot of people tends to happen is that they rely on the pick to make rhythm, and what you ultimately want to get good at is making your hammer-ons and pull-offs sound as good as your picking. And so that means that you have to get very rhythmic with the way that you're like slamming your fingers onto the fretboard. And obviously like you want to get like an efficient range of motion, but at the same time, like I'm slamming my fingers. I'm slamming it as hard as I can, as hard as I need to, but not like lifting up a lot at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like you can see it like now I might think about tapping my foot. 3, 4. I'm not saying double the subdivision yet, but I'm saying that like that will happen inevitably. But at first, just keep the 8th note only, not the 16th note, and try to just get that really locked in the path, in the rhythm.
Yeah.
That's it. Isolate everything. Now it's coming. This is how it's done, man. This is literally how it's done. Yes. When your fingers and the notes of the triad become rhythmic devices, that's how you know you're practicing. Look at that, dude. You can shred this stuff like overnight.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Look and see how effortless the picking is?
Yeah.
So the answer to your picking question is do the optimum string combos. Remember I just said a second ago, don't overthink your picking.
Yeah.
Exactly. If your pathway is optimized, you literally don't think about your picking. You don't actually think about it. It's a phenomenon, dude. I've been teaching this, thinking about. It's a phenomenon. Anyone who overthinks their picking is dead. And I know that because I used to do it. The whole logic of fretboard mastery is that if you actually master the fretboard, this is a natural byproduct. It's a natural byproduct because you'll do hammer-ons, you'll do pull-offs, and you'll pick when you need to. But if you already see that you have so much potential with just hammer-ons and pull-offs, that means that when you throw the pick in, you can literally play like You name it, dude. Guthrie Govan or like Tim Hen, I don't know, like whoever you want to. You literally can do that stuff because it's like people are always thinking, oh, I need to be like, right? That's what they're thinking. But it's like, no, it's literally never like that. It's always stuff like, wow, if you made it this far, then for real, dude, book a call with me straight up right now. Link in the description, mentalitymusic.com, systems for creation. Click on that link. You can book straight into my calendar. I'd be happy to have a serious conversation with you about your musical development. If you're a serious musician in pursuit of unequivocal musical mastery, it would be a huge mistake not to get on a call with me when I'm offering it to you, because I'll be happy to show you my course library. I'll be happy to show you all the different stuff we got. I mean, like I said, we didn't talk anything about the chord mastery system. We didn't talk anything about fat shapes. There are some other videos about that on my channel, but that is a huge, deep thing. And you see now a new duality emerges, right? Between the chord system and the single note system. That's kind of my main thing with Fretboard Mastery. You got the Fretboard Mastery chord concept, and then you have the Fretboard Mastery single note concept. Those both break in whole bunches of different directions. And I've got step-by-step practice systems to integrate all these things rapidly. Like if you do the exact things that I tell you to do in the assignments, and you adopt these practice mentalities and evolve them towards composition and ultimately your vision being actualized as a musician, then you should make the next 4 to 5 to 6 months of your life the most transformative they've ever been. Enroll in my program. Let's go all the way deep with music, and we'll literally turn your musical genius on like a switch that was always just waiting to be flipped. And I know that that switch is going to be flipped because you're still watching this video. I flipped that switch. It doesn't require you to learn years of bullshit. Music is so much simpler than everyone else has made it. That's why I'm so insistent about this methodology, because it's just like, oh, you want something that works? Well, I actually have something that works. Actual musical growth hacking we're talking about here, just by looking at things from a different perspective and ultimately reverse engineering a creative vision. That's what all the other pedagogy is missing. Like, think about every other course you've looked at. Are they telling you to make the music that you want to make? I don't know. If they are, that's a good sign, right? Because why else are you learning music? If not to realize a skill set that allows you to produce, perform, improvise, compose your own musical ideas. And I can give you those components that you're going to be sequencing on a silver platter with systems for integration through practice. So book the call, mentalitymusic.com/systems for creation. Let's get on the call ASAP. Love to speak with you. And I have to practice that. Fuck. But it's like, that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Though. Like, get to the point of seeing this, like I'm fast forwarding it a little bit, but the point of seeing this is like, if I can do this, which is why I always come back. Now I'm picking. Now no picking. But back to this. I'm not overthinking my picking. I'm focusing on my picking, making the most clean, crystal clear sound. And so then, like, the whole practice is like, if you focus on just doing that, you trust that the pathway allows you to play faster because it's optimized for playing fast, which is why I can go. It's the pathway that allows me to actually think about it that way on a basic fundamental level. If you can optimize for 2 note per string, you're pretty much always in a very, very good situation. So that's kind of an underlying principle of Fretboard Mastery. However, there's plenty of situations, which we'll get to in due time, where you're playing, for example, 2 notes and then 1 note and then 2 notes. There's a whole set of those. They have their own actual philosophy. Quick example would be like, here's a classic 2-1-2 situation. That's a 2-1-2. It's just a different thing. It's got all these like, as opposed to what we're doing here, which is like this thing. The 2 note per strings allow you to really rip that rhythm, but the 2-1-2s force you to pick more. So it's just a thing. It's just a thing. I would advise, and I tend to optimize more for less picking. That's kind of one of my things. That's totally like a taste thing. But I can see that the picking is totally natural to you. So don't worry about it. But for now, focus on something small like what we're doing here. Okay, so with that in mind, can you play that whole first inversion pathway? That's why that one is a really good one to practice, because if you can get clean on that beat, you know, it's like it's always going to be there. Like just optimize, think about it, just, you know, like do what you're doing. Maybe just try something, a pattern like this, because it emerges like very naturally, like. And if I focus like that, I'm not going to ruin that B string. I can really isolate. There's no B string ringing out now. See, it's hard. Like
Yeah.
we all sound like almost like we're like newbies when we do, but it's the point. That's good. That's good. That's what you need to focus on. Those fundamentals. See, look at it. It's like magic, dude.
Yeah.
It's rhythm is why.
Yeah.
This is how you hack it.
Yeah.
That is on point. So watch what happens. How do we eliminate the B string as a problem? Well, one thing we can do is we can allow ourselves to actually play the logical notes of the B string, which would be here. We can add that. It's all weird. Like now we're doing something different, but it's fine. We can do that because think about it. In performance, you're not going to choose the harder thing. You're going to choose the thing that's going to sound the best. So, for example, you might not choose that particular fingering if it's not comfortable, like where you skip the B string because it might ring out. So you might have that like, I'm not sure I'm ready to do that. So in the case, this is where the B string fits. It's C on the 13th fret, right? And then F on the 16th fret. And so this would be a great isolation practice right here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a classic shape, but I just want to point out like that emerged, right, kind of from a different perspective. And so like that's a whole third element of fretboard mastery, but that stuff emerges when you're just kind of like doing the sort of classic, you know, full range 2 note per string stuff. There's always that weird B string situation, and it happens on different string sets. Like just to give another example, like just to see that it's not always on the G and the E string thing. Sometimes, for example, it can be on the D and the B string. Watch what I mean. So F minor. Now I'm skipping the G string. I'm doing a whole different thing just to make a point here. But look at this. So I'm playing A flat C, and then I skip the G string and I'm going F A flat. That right there is a fretboard mastery 2 note per string optimization. Look where it comes from, right? Just to put it all into context. If I only play 2 note per strings, that one fits. That's naturally fitting into it, right? So, right, we're gonna get those, but you see what I skipped the G string. So there's always a string skip in the 2 note per string framework. If you're playing it's like what? But then it's like, oh no, because when you see what you play on the string you skipped, it's like, oh yeah. Watch what right here. Right. Right. So like there's 2 things happening. One is perfect essential triadic Bach, old school, basics, essentials. And then the other thing is literally Holdsworthian fretboard logic. And I credit Holdsworth for it because he actually admitted that that's what he was doing. He admitted that, I'm using the fretboard to like figure out how to play like easy things, right? All the other people were like, oh no, you can't do that. But he was like, dude, I do this all the time, right? So that's why I give him a credit for it, because it's like, if you want to actually just play like optimum, 2-note per string guitar stuff, you're going to have things that don't fit into like the traditional sort of, you're going to break out of triads and things like this, right? But the fact that we didn't break out of the triads, it just doubles up the note. It's weird. It's like arbitrary is what it is, but it's not arbitrary because it's the fretboard. So it's just like, what is happening? It's just a phenomenon of the universe. But what I'm trying to show is like, be specifically aware of the string skipping phenomenon and look to isolate it when it makes sense. And by isolating it, I mean, a perfect example would be like doing stuff like this. You're practicing your full-blown, 2-bar framework here, and we're only thinking about that F minor. I'm going to think about stuff like this. I'm going to think about like, then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, you know what I'm doing. You see exactly what I'm doing. I'm being very conscious of the notes of the triad that I'm playing. I'm hearing, oh, I'm doubling up on the fifth right there, and then I'm doubling up on the root right there. Like, just being super, super aware of it, because the problem is it gets out of control if you're not aware of it, and then it becomes something you're not doing intentionally. Then it's a problem. So it's good to isolate, oh, this phenomenon is going to keep coming back. Okay, final full circle moment here. How do you put the whole thing in a practice system? It's like this. You know what I mean? Like I did the thing, I did the thing. But that's what the practice is. That's all it is. You keep the same pathways and you improvise in the pathways with specific discipline. You specifically discipline yourself to focusing on only 2 parameters of variation. Rhythmic variation, that's what I was just doing, and obviously inevitably melodic variation, right? And so that's just this, right? Like 3 to 4 to that's rhythmic and melodic variation only. And so there's that discipline of staying to the pathways. Now you can see where this whole thing blows up like freaking actually exponentially when you then apply it to a whole song, your own song. And the thing is, this framework fits exactly into your style of writing, because you write songs that have those types of harmonic rhythms, like the classic jazz, R&B type harmonic rhythms. So to master your own music, this is how you would do it. You would run your single note, 2-note per string fretboard mastery pathways. Logically, does it make sense to play a local configuration here? Or does it make sense to play an extended configuration here? Notice how it worked in this context. The 2 chords that were 2 notes per 2 beats per chord, they were local. Makes a ton of sense. The longer chord can be extended range. Classic, right? That's exactly what I've been seeing has been helpful, like for people to start to see the fretboard in that duality, instill from the first principle triad fundamental perspective. It always seems to come back there, because when you build on top of that, that's when your stuff cuts. That's when your sevenths cut, but also those ninths cut super deep if you're coming out of that triad. So it's like you're going to stay super disciplined to only the triads until you can play, level 1, level 2. So level 1, just to be super crystal clear, level 1, 3 to 4 to... Right, that's level 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so then level 2 is just improvising that way, 3 to 4 to... That's it. So that's the first thing you accomplish. And so what happens is, as fretboard mastery compounds on itself, you start to see, oh, well, now I just add my tetrachord right into the good old pathway. And there's where your 3-note per strings emerge. Okay, so last point. Mm-hmm. So we're optimizing for 2-note per strings. Dude, this is the thing that people always forget. It's the 1-note per string That is the bad one. That's the one that sucks. 1 note per string sucks. But 2 note per string is awesome. 3 note per string is at least as good. Maybe potentially theoretically better if you think about it. Because 3 note per string allows you to think about like playing just think about the combinations of legato that don't require you to pick. All the combinations of hammer-ons and pull-offs with 3 note per string. You know, you gotta like get super deep in the 2 note per strings, because all of your 3 note and 4 note, when you add that tetrachord, and then maybe when you even add like fully extended or pentatonics, actually, right? Because if you got triads and you got tetrachord, then the next one is pentatonics. When you get 4 note per strings on your pentatonics, you've Holdsworthed it, right? So stick with just those 2 note per strings. Once you're solid on that practice, add the 9th on D flat, on C. Find where the 9th fits in that grip on all those, and then that's it. That's where the next level.
Got it.
It compounds right all the way.
Got it.